Since the dawn of time, mankind has struggled to increase our understanding of technology. We've worked our hardest to take and develop new mechanisms and machines and things that it could improve our quality of life, but it was all towards one ultimate goal. First, we discovered fire, and that expanded humankind's horizons and showed us so many new things. And then we discovered the wheel, and that opened up the world for us and allowed us to travel. But even these amazing technologies that we created so far in the past, in ancient days, were all towards one ultimate goal. Even back then, they knew what they were working towards. And that, of course, was building-sized mechs with big guns on them that could blow apart tanks and infantry and cool shit. And you gotta love it. So, of course, we are talking about DVG's Valkyrie that is soon going to be coming to Kickstarter. It is in very much prototype phase right now. So everything I'm showing you guys right now, prototype, nothing's finalized. We're very early. I think we're in like alpha stage. We're not even like beta right now. So do keep that in mind while we're talking about this. And this is a type of video that I haven't done too many of. I'm going to try a few more of these and see, how you guys like it and respond to it. But I don't even have the game yet. It's not even a preview of the game. I'm just excited about it and want to talk about it. So I'm like, screw it. I'm going to make a video. I'm going to gather up whatever I can get, whatever pictures, whatever information, whatever I can figure out about the game. I'm going to throw it together. Just get the word out to show you guys a little bit about it. I've definitely been excited about it. I mean, who doesn't love huge mechs, shooting missiles, and blowing shit apart? You gotta love it. So that's the basis of DVG's Valkyrie. And this is a step in a new direction for them. Because they, as far as I know, I'm trying to think, they haven't done a whole lot of miniatures. They've had, what is that company? GHQ or GMQ? I think it's GHQ. The ones that do the little tiny metal tanks and stuff like that. They've had a few of those things as kind of like stretch goals for like Sherman Leader, Tiger Leader, that type stuff. But that's not real like miniatures gaming. Someone's going to be putting in a comment, shut up, Gimpy, that's miniatures combat. Whatever. Okay. That's, neither here nor there. But they haven't done a whole lot of miniatures gaming. Actually, I don't think they've done any miniatures gaming. It's all been counters prior to this. But they are really taking a step in a new direction. And from what I've been able to figure out in looking at what they've been posting online and some of the information they've sent me and reading over the website, it appears kind of like they took a little bit of everything, threw it into a blender, stirred it together and had Valkyrie pop out. They wanted something with miniatures, so they put miniatures in. But they've got that DVG Solitaire gameplay, structure, like that was at the forefront of what they were wanting to do. So they've got that there. So it's kind of like they took miniatures and added it to Sherman Leader, but modern day setting, actually futuristic setting, because it's not even modern day. This thing is set in 2060, I believe it is. So futuristic setting, of course. Got dice gameplay in it, custom dice gameplay into it. 3D terrain that's into it. Just so many cool aspects that have really caught my attention. And, I get excited about plenty of DVG games that are coming up. But this one, when I saw, big mechs, I was, okay, yeah, you got my attention. Let's take and do what we got to do to get this, on the road and out of the door as quick as possible. There is a backstory to the game. I'll tell you guys a little bit about that. We're not going to go over all of it. There is the DVG website for the game. It is dvgvalkyrie.com. I'll take and put it down in the description. Go down there, go to the website, check it out, and you can read over all the different history and background. On screen right now, you can see the map of the political world that exist in Valkyrie, in their world that they've created. Of course, you've got the United States, you've got the EU, which in their world is not like a commercial thing that it is now. It's its own country. So it's kind of like how America is, a bunch of different states put together into a country. Well, that's like a bunch of states put together into the European country. Now is a way to think about it. Of course, you got Russia, you got China, And you can't have a game about big mechs without having Japan in it. I'm guessing that the grayed out countries, though, those evidently just don't count. They don't like Australia or Canada too much. I guess they're just not cool enough to have big mechs. They do have, what is this? The African group, like the African conglomerate that's trying to look after their territory and make sure they don't get stomped by a bunch of big mechs. They've got the Islamic Caliphate, and there, that tiny little spot right there in the center of the map, they've got Israel, which is doing what Israel does, and, standing its ground. The general gist of it is that they start the history just a little bit past where we are now. There's a terrorist group that does this attack over in China, and China, doesn't listen to the terrorists who are saying back off, taking over a little compound. China sends in some troops, and some other people send in some troops, and the terrorists end up setting off a big nuclear device. The nuclear device wipes out millions of people and irradiates large parts of China and Russia, huge nuclear cloud. China, of course, takes this very badly, so they take and send, and of course, I realize that someone pointed it out in my previous video that I say take and a lot. So yes, make a drinking game out of it, because I can't stop doing it. It's what I do. Deal with it. Anyway, China takes and goes after, I think, was it Kazakhstan? Something like that. I'm looking at the website right now. And sends their troops in. They go to war. But this is when America reveals some of its newer technology, where they had powered battle suits that infantry could wear that were, strong enough they could take and fight a armored vehicle, a person in a suit, kind of like Iron Man fighting tanks and Abrams and T-80s, all that good stuff. So I looked, I didn't see if there was, they just said there was a technological advancement in like the 2020s somewhere, but it doesn't say what's powering these things. I looked a couple times and I haven't been able to find anything. So if you guys find out what's powering these, if they're like nuclear powered, or if they figured out how to make Tony Stark's arc reactor to power these things, put it down in the comment, because I'm curious, because I haven't found it in the storyline. But that goes on. The Americans are trying to do what the Americans do, which is peacekeeping and trying to keep people, backed off. So they get the Chinese pushback, and the Chinese government is kind of crushed at this point from all the damage they suffer. So they start doing a lot of trade deals in the region, and that's pretty much their thing up until the 2060s. Some other neat aspects about the history. And like I said, I'm not going to talk about all the history. Go there and read it for yourself to, find all the cool stuff that they're doing. I like the fact that they do have a backstory. They're not just like, hey, here's mechs, go play with them and try them out. They actually do have a little backstory to it. And the backstory is accounting for why there are certain units in the game, because there are M1 Abrams and helicopters and Bradley fighting vehicles and T-80s. It's stuff that we have now, right? The equipment that we're using now. And there's this neat story. It's the 2035 Extraordinary Powers. And it's this guy talking about how the 1911 Colt 45 pistol was obviously made in 1911. But it's still just as good a weapon now, and it can kill someone just as well now as it did back then. Now it's been touched up a little bit and modernized, a little better, materials used to make it, but it's still a good killing weapon. And they talk about how the AK-47, same thing, made of wood and metal, no plastic, no electronics, no anything, but one of the best fighting weapons that's ever been created, and it was made back in 1947. And it's still stomping ass, all these years later. And they talk about how this guy, it's a general that's talking to some weapons contractors in America, saying, I want you to take and apply that same concept to the rest of our equipment. So M1s and our tanks, our APCs, our helicopters, everything that we're using, these are good, proven pieces of gear. Our Paladin self-propelled guns, all this stuff works. Just modernize it, make it as good, more reliable, cheaper to operate, cheaper to buy. streamline it in every way possible, but you don't need to go out and reinvent the wheel. It's already been invented. It already works. Just make it a sharper, faster, sleeker wheel is what they talk about. So that's how they explain why there's still gear that we use now in the game on top of having these Valkyries, these huge mechs fighting with each other and doing all the cool mech stuff that they do. They also address why there's not nuclear weapons being used in this world. And without getting into long-winded about why, basically, there was one nuke that accidentally went off, and because of that, a few other nukes went off, and back and forth with the countries going after each other. And one of the leaders of one of the nuclear crews contacted the rest of the nuclear crews for the rest of the world, the guys that would push the big red button, which funnily enough, that's actually what my dad did when he was in the Air Force. He worked on the Titan II missiles. He was the guy that pushed the red button to make them go boom, or whatever the hell they did. He was in front of the displays, and they had all that crap. He told me a funny story. I'm not too sure, the validity of it. You guys let me know if any of you were missile techs, but he said there was something about there was a thing they had to go in there if World War III started up and they weren't going to survive. One of them had to go in there and hit something with a hammer that would cause the missile to go off. It was like a last-ditch effort if everything else failed. It would cause the missile to fire, but it would kill the guy who hit it with the hammer. So my dad had a tendency to have big elephant, big fish stories. So let me know if that one's true down in the comments. Anyway, this commander contacted all the others, and they made a pact, a protectorate of all the remaining missiles and control rooms that they took out most of the launch sites, and the ones that were left, like nuclear subs and a few other locations, they said that, hold up, let me find where it is. All these crews announced to all the governments that they were no longer allowed to deploy nukes, even tactical ones, they're all prohibited. No biological or chemical weapons, no manufacturing new nuclear weapons, and no approaching a nuclear weapons site. Otherwise, you would be punished severely. And they say in the history of it that some of the countries tried. They paid a heavy price for it. One happened, the Chinese government tried to sneak a special forces unit into a missile base to regain control over the missiles. The special forces unit was part of a monthly supply convoy mandated by the decree. Before the team could breach the inner defenses, the missile crew was able to send out a stress call, and a European submarine launched a missile and destroyed a Chinese army invading Alaska. So basically, you don't listen to us, we'll destroy you. And it was the missile crews deciding amongst themselves that we're going to stop Armageddon, because if we keep letting the leaders do what they're doing, they're going to take and wipe out all of civilization. There'll be nothing left, which is true. If everyone launched everything they had, there'd be nothing left in the world. So I can get why they would want to stop that. But I think it's neat that they took the time to explain why you're having modern day equipment in the game, why you don't have nuclear weapons and biological weapons in the game, why the heaviest weapon is the Valkyrie, which of course is the focus of the game, the mech, but why that is the focus, why they don't have any nuclear weapons, they don't have any big missiles to wipe out the entire force. They're still fighting modern day warfare like we would fight now. They're just using weapons of that time frame to do so. Okay, so let me talk about the game briefly, just a little bit. Like I said, I'm not going to cover everything, just a little taste for you to get you interested in it. There are going to be multiple factions. If I understand it correctly, the core game box is going to have the United States and the Russian Federation as the main adversaries, and I'm not entirely sure how they're going to take and do the expansions yet, if there's going to be multiple core boxes with different factions in it, or if it's going to be like a nation that you can buy. I think that's the way they're going with it, if I remember right. Like you could buy the nation of Japan that'll have its mechs, its unit cards, its small units, the infantry and the tanks and all that other stuff. pilot cards, everything that you would need to play that faction. So you could buy Japan, the European Union. I'm not entirely sure again on how many different factions, if they're going to have as many as you see on the world overview map, if they're going to have, what is it, like 8 different factions represented, or if it's going to be 5, 6, 7. We'll have to wait just a little bit longer to see how many of those they're going to put out. The main ones, of course, are going to be the mechs. I'll throw a couple of data cards on screen for you guys. And you can see that the mechs have multiple different weapon slots on them. Some of the mechs are going to have weapons in their torsos. Some are going to have weapons in their arms. Basic stuff. If you've played any BattleTech or Mech Warrior, any of that type of gameplay, you're going to fall right into this very easily. And I like the way that they've got these data sheets, because this is what you would expect if you were playing, you know, that game. If you're playing Mech Warrior and you bring it down to a board game fashion, this is what you expect. These data sheets, they can take so many hits to the arm before the arm's destroyed. They can take so many hits to the leg before the leg's destroyed. If you lose the arm and it has a laser weapon or a rocket in it, then you take and lose that weapon, which it's so cool how those weapons fire. We're going to address that here in a sec. So each of the different nations have a different feel to them. The American Valkyries are supposed to be some of the most advanced, although the Japanese are supposed to be right up there with them on the type of mechs that they use. So it seems like the United States mechs are going to be bigger, hard-hitting type mechs, highly defensive, and the Japanese mechs are going to be advanced, hard-hitting, but more like smaller, ninja, I'm going to jump over you and knife you in the back and vanish away in a little puff of smoke. That type of mech, and you know, as much as you could expect. With the Russian Federation, it's going to be what you would expect for Russians. Big, lumbering, you know, Valkyrie take and smash you, you know, that cool stuff. Large numbers, big, heavy, large armor, big guns. I'm not sure what the differences for the European Union are going to be. I'm going to guess somewhere as a mix in between what we've already seen, maybe a mix of smaller and medium-sized units, just depending on their technology level. Because I think the Russians and the Europeans and some of the other factions, they're not necessarily, like the Chinese faction as well, they're not necessarily developing this technology on their own, or they're not developing it as well. They're reverse engineering it from the other factions. So they're not going to be as advanced if they have to wait for someone else to create it, get the destroyed pieces, and then try to recreate it there on their own. In the stream of what DVG does, though, you're going to have pilot cards for these as well. And again, what I'm showing you, keep in mind, all prototype, nothing I'm showing you is final. But it looks like they're doing similar to what they've done with Sherman Leader and Hornet Leader and all this other cool stuff. Leader. I couldn't resist. They'll have experience levels, and they'll cost so many points depending on their experience level, and that'll give them certain bonuses. So you'll take and select your pilots and select your mechs. And I'm not sure if they're going to have SO points, special operations points, whatever. I'm assuming it's going to be some type of point, to purchase your forces. And you'll select your pilots that you're going to take and run. You can have fewer pilots with better skills or more pilots with less skills. I am assuming that it's going to be similar to Sherman Leader and the others in the fact that you'll probably have to have a variety of skill levels. They're probably not going to let you have all like just a few veteran pilots. I remember in the previous one, it was something like you could have 1 veteran and like 3 average and then 4 or 5 green, just depending on whatever they end up deciding with it. But you do have to kind of spread it out. I would expect them to go in that same vein. Along with the pilot cards, you're also going to have vehicle cards. Again, prototype, don't take it as final stuff. I'm going to repeat it a lot just to make sure you guys understand. These are going to list down the stats very similar to what the Valkyries do, but you'll see that there's a lot less information because they've got a lot less going on. They're a lot smaller. They're small units. It'll tell how many dice that they can have for whatever they attack with, what range, if there's any penetration. The thing is, they say they have movement dice, And I looked, I couldn't find too much on the movement dice exactly how that works, or if that's still in at this point. So I can't really tell you just yet about movement dice. I watched through the videos and it seemed like they just had movement points previously, but so movement dice might be something new. Like I said, prototype, so I don't know everything. I will definitely update you guys though as soon as I know about it. But these small units, they're going to range from everything between striker-type vehicles, Abrams tanks, Paladin self-propelled guns, which do get to fire a long distance, like damn near across the map. They'll get either bonuses to defense. Yeah, I think that's it. The enemy gets bonuses to defense if you're firing at a very far range, so that is something to keep in mind. But it does keep your long-range artillery out of the heat if they can be back behind the Valkyries or the tanks and, popping artillery shells. And another neat aspect about the attacks, I can't wait to tell you guys about this. Humvees, infantry squads, which, are like, a bunch of Iron Men running around with their little things because they're still in mech suits. All right, and I got to address this. The custom dice is one of the coolest things I'm excited about because the weapons that each one of them are using is going to depend. I'm going to actually take and throw back up the Valkyries on screen for you guys now, the Valkyrie data card, because the Valkyries show it very well, but each of the different attacks have a different dice used with them, okay? So if you're firing artillery, for example, there's projectile custom dice that you'll use. Or if you're firing a laser, there's laser dice. Or there's autocannon type dice, rapid fire, or cannon dice. That is the neatest thing to me because they can adjust the numbers on those dice. Because very brief explanation, you'll roll, say you have an attack of 3, you roll 3 dice, and you'll total the amount of whatever numbers are on there. And then your opponent will roll defense dice, which I'm thinking are just generic defense dice that every unit will use. And they'll also have numbers on them. The stronger the unit, the more defense dice, farther away, yada, yada. And if your attack numbers total together beat their defensive numbers, the unit is either destroyed, or if it's a Valkyrie, it takes damage depending on how much of that gets negated by the defense dice. So that is something I'm really looking forward to, is the dice, the custom dice being separated by the type of attack that you do. And it even has the close attack, close combat. So the Valkyrie can walk up and stomp on the tank, and there's dice specifically for that. So that's another real cool aspect that I'm looking forward to. Something else that they have is terrain that can be on the map, and it looks like the majority of the terrain is 3 hex pieces, but it looks like they do have others that are like singles or doubles, so I'm not sure the variety of terrain they're going to have just yet. But they do have terrain that's just generic, like trees or ridge lines, mountains, that type stuff. And the terrain provides different bonuses and penalties. So depending on what type of terrain you're in, you might get a bonus to your attack for being in that terrain, but you'll get a penalty to your defense because you're there. Of course, if you're not in the terrain, it's not going to, affect you one way or the other, but that's something to consider. You can put one of your harder hitting units in that bonus terrain to get an extra die to throw to put some heat down range, but you might open yourself up to another type of attack. And they've even got campaign type of stuff associated with this terrain, because there's resource installations that are terrain that can be taken over or destroyed depending on whatever your scenario goal might be, and that can carry over. So you can take over a power plant or, an oil refinery or whatever, the terrain is that you're going after. But by taking over that terrain, that gives you more SO points. I don't know what they're going to call it in the game, but more points that you can use to buy more tanks or buy more mechs or improve your mech or repair your mech. in between the different types of, or different campaign battles that you have on. So we already know that they're looking into implementing an ongoing campaign system, just like in the previous games, that you can keep track of, but there's going to be real world consequences in the battle itself. So depending on how well you actually succeed, you can come out with extra points if you capture the right areas. In mentioning that, I also have to mention there's fortified bases that are terrains as well. I've got one on screen for you now. Again, I don't know exactly how these are going to fit into the game, but it looks like they do have weapons. This one looks like it's got light cannons and heavy cannons and scouting towers and its own health bar that you have to keep track of, different strong points on it. So I am assuming that there's going to be missions where you have one side trying to defend their base and the other, side coming in trying to take out the base. And maybe if you take out the base, then that changes what mission you have for the next campaign level. Or if you don't take out the base, or, whatever. Real cool stuff that they have the data card for it that can actually be on the map and affect your future game. And of course, with this being a DVG game, it would not be a DVG game if it wasn't focused on the solitaire play, which is where it should be, because it is a Dan versus game. There's going to be a solitaire deck, and that's going to operate to tell you what the AI is going to do. I'm not sure, how much this is going to change or how close to final this is, but it looks actually kind of similar to AI decks that I've done previously, that it'll tell you AI unit closest to X, closest to terrain or closest to enemy will move and attack, or move and defend, or try to flank, or, whatever it's accounting for during the scenario itself. But you'll have a deck there that operates the AI for you. And I watched a little bit of them playing with this deck, and it seemed to work really well, actually. So I got to give them props for that. In fact, honestly, in watching the little bit that I've seen about this game, they could have made this game without the mechs, and it still would have caught my attention. I still would have been interested in it. So the mechs are just like awesome sauce gravy on top of a good game system that they've already got on board. It's kind of like they've combined Sherman Leader with X-Wing with a little bit of Lock and Load Tactical and put it all together and put some big mechs on there, and had Mech Warrior. So looking forward to this thing, I'll tell you, with the AI decks on there. But it's not just solitaire, because you can play cooperatively as well, and you can play it competitively. There's no reason at all you can't use the rules of the game exactly as they're written to play a competitive game with your opponent, friends, family, whoever is interested in mechs, which we know is everyone. So that's about where the game's actually at this point. I know they're still in some development. They're printing off some stuff. They're getting 3D printing off some stuff. That's awesome too. They're getting, last prototype copies and everything together. I am looking forward to hopefully receiving one of those soon. I would love to give this game a try, so I will be showing it to you guys as soon as I possibly can, because I do want to, check this out. I am very excited for it. I will put up more information if I do come across it for you guys. Definitely put down any questions you have. Make sure you check out the DVG Valkyrie website that I've got down in the description to see all the different images and pictures that they have of some of the terrain. Now, it is a work in progress as far as like the rules are concerned, so you're not going to be able to know everything about the game on the website just yet, but they are updating it really regularly. Same with the Facebook, the DVG Valkyrie Facebook page. Go check there. They have Valkyrie Tuesdays where they put up new information of what they're working on. I am jealous, because if I lived near them, I'd be over at their warehouse every Tuesday playing this shit to, put it on Facebook to show you guys. Unfortunately, I am across the country and getting ready to have a baby, so I am definitely not traveling. All right, but that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys are excited about this and looking forward to it just as much as I am. And I'll make sure to take and put up anything else that I find out about for you guys, and a playthrough hopefully very soon for you guys. All right, that's going to be it for me. You guys take care. I'll catch you in the next one.